People spend a lot of money on generators, and they do it so that they can have power when there's a power outage. But the mistake they make is they don't take care of them, and there's just a few things you need to do. So in today's video, I'm going to try to help. I'm going to show you how to do all the basic maintenance on this Honda EU7000is generator. Now, these principles will apply to just about any generator, but I'm going to take you through very detailed steps so that you can do it all yourself. This thing weighs a lot, and this is no fun to bring to a dealer, and there's no reason to, and you can save money. So watch this video and I'll show you how to do it all. And you should be doing this oil change at least once a year or more often if you're running it quite often. So I'm going to take you through the steps, explain how it's done. Doesn't take very long and it's pretty easy and saves you a trip to the dealer. Alright, first thing we want to do is start the generator and let it run for about 5 to 10 minutes to let the oil warm up. Turn your key, one press. I'm going to let that go for about 5 minutes. Alright, so these are the tools you need to do this job. Pretty basic stuff. This is a drain pan. You can certainly use a piece of foil left over from the holidays or some sort of a pan. Oil rag, flathead screwdriver, 3/8 inch ratchet. This is just a normal ratchet. I'm using one with a flex head. You certainly can use whatever ratchet you have around. This is important. This is a 12 millimeter socket. And again, you want to use metric here. And again, it's 12 millimeter. That's for the drain bolt. Next thing you need is going to be 2 quarts of Honda oil. The generator actually only uses about 1.1 quarts, but you're really going to need to use the second quart to top it off. So buy 2. Last but not least, so you might be wondering, where's the funnel for this oil change? This is a great little tip I use all the time. I've been doing this for years. So these you can get at any auto store, and a lot of times the Honda dealers are going to have them too. All this is a squirt top that they generally use with differential oil. So if you go to like an AutoZone or any of your auto parts store, typically they're going to have these around. A lot of times they're free. But once you get one, you can reuse them. These are a lot cleaner than a funnel, and I'll show you how I use this. It just makes the job a lot easier. If you don't have this little thing and you don't want to bother, just use a funnel, it's fine. The problem with the funnel is though, with the Honda generators, it's very easy to overfill the oil. So we're going to open up the side door, and if you were standing at the front of your generator, this is the right side. So again, if you're facing the plugs, the easiest way to think about this is the right side. But it's not a big deal if you open the wrong side, you just go to the other door. If you're looking at the top of the generator, looking down, you're going to notice that right here, there is a small black little square cutout. All you need to do is just use your finger, and you're going to just push on that, and it's going to pop right out. So you see that just falls. You won't lose it because it's got a little hook on it. But next step is just as easy. We're just going to take the oil dipstick out. You're just going to gently unscrew that. Have your rag ready, because chances are it's going to drip oil when it comes out. So just take this dipstick. I'm going to clean it off a bit, and we'll put this aside. Next step we're going to do is we're going to put our drain pan underneath the generator. What's awesome about Honda is that this generator is high enough up. So all you need to do is just put your pan right underneath. You don't need to jack the generator up. You don't really need to do much of anything. Next step is we got to crack the drain bolt and let the oil come out. So that you know where it is, the oil bolt is right here. The silver bolt right here. Very easy to access, and there's even a little ramp. This little black thing is a ramp so that when the oil comes out, it's going to go right down that cutout into the drain pan that we just put down. Now we need to get our tools. We need to get our ratchet, and again we're going to use a 12 millimeter socket. So put this together, make sure that we're going the right way on the ratchet, and we're going to take this bolt out. And this bolt is pretty easy to get at. The most important part is making sure that you've got a good solid fit in the bolt, and then we're going to hold on and give it a turn. Okay, now that's loose. Okay, we're going to unscrew the drain bolt with our hands, and you'll see that the oil should start to come out. At the end of this bolt, there's a washer. I wouldn't worry about it right now, but we just want to make sure that the washer is on the bolt. If it's not, we'll get it later. And there goes our oil. We're going to let our oil drain for about 3 to 5 minutes. If it's colder out, you may need to let it drain longer. I like to let it drain until it really isn't coming out much at all, maybe a drip or two. Okay, our oil's looking pretty good, so let's spend another second on this drain bolt. So if you look right here, right now I've got the drain bolt. It has no washer on it though. So the washer is still in this little holder here. So you could just put the bolt back in and not worry about it, but you really want to make sure that there is a washer on this bolt. So what I do is I actually put my little finger in here and I'm going to try to wiggle it out and see if we can get it, which we just did. So all you got to do is press in there a little bit. I really would avoid using a tool. So this washer just belongs right on this bolt, just like that. So again, it's critical. You got to make sure you have a drain plug washer. If something goes wrong and you lose this, these are only about 50 cents at the dealer. Might be a little bit more than that, but you can buy another one. Generally, I do not replace these, especially on a newer machine like this. I might replace it down the road, but that's up to you. Okay, so now we've got our oil drained out, we've got our plug out, we've got our washer on the bolt. So all we've got to do now, I like to dry this a little bit just to get that little bit of oil off. So we'll just give that a quick wipe. And then I'm going to replace this. I'm going to screw this in by hand. I don't recommend using your ratchet until you're at the very end. Very gently, you just want to tighten that up. Tighten that in until it doesn't go anymore. Alright, that's in. So at this point, we're going to take our ratchet. I'm going to reverse the direction, and we're just going to give this bolt a little bit of a tightening. So as far as how tight to make this, you want to snug it up. I don't recommend tightening it and over tightening it, So just tighten it a fair amount, but if you feel like you're really going crazy, you're probably going to have an issue. Now we're going to take our drain pan out, since there's no real need for it anymore. You obviously want to dispose of that oil in a legal and proper way. Next piece, this little rubber plug that we replaced that's in the bottom here, we're just going to press that right back in. That just presses in. You don't need any tools. Just push it in the middle, right in the middle, and hopefully you can see my finger there pushing that. And what happens is it's got a little lip to it, and once you get it in, you can slide it around a little bit, and it's pretty good. So now we're all set. We've got this tightened back up. Our drain panel is replaced. All we've got to do is add the oil and we're done. Now this is where my little trick is going to come in. So we're going to take our quart of oil. We're going to open this right up. Most Honda oil does not have a seal on the bottle. They just break, just kind of like soda bottles, so there's no foil seal to remove. But this is where my little trick really helps. So instead of bothering with that funnel, this little doodad, or whatever you want to call it, but it's essentially designed for when you're putting differential oil in. And like I said, these little caps are all over the place. If you ask an oil dealer if you have any of the differential fill nozzles, they're typically going to give you these, and they usually have a bundle of them around. So these fit on these perfectly. So I'm going to screw that on, and it screws on tight. And what I like about this is, again, you don't need a funnel. So right off the bat, this entire quart is going to go right in here, and you're not going to have an issue doing that. So we're going to pour this in, and I'm going to watch through the oil filler hole, and we're squeezing in this entire quart, but I have a pretty good view as I'm filling it up so that I know I'm not going to overfill it. And I don't recommend you pull the bottle too far away, but I wanted to give you a little bit of a shot of how it looks. And I can already see that it's starting to fill up a little bit inside, but with the 1 quart, this shouldn't be a problem. So again, this just took me like 20 seconds, and I didn't need a funnel, which was nice. And it's not that a funnel's a big problem, but I don't spill any oil, which is good, and it really is a time saver. So now that I've just added my 1 quart, if we look in the hole, you can just see that the oil fill is pretty much getting right up there to the threads. So I could add a little bit more oil, but there's really no need for it at this point. And as I said earlier, sometimes you're going to get the 1.1 quarts out, other times you're just going to get 1 quart out. So in this time, I think that looks pretty good, but let's give it a check to make sure. So let's take our dipstick, we're going to put it into the hole. Do not tighten it while you're checking the oil. That's not how you do it. You just put it in, hold your rag underneath to catch any oil spilling, take it out, and let's take a look at it. So right now, if you look where my finger is, I can see that there's oil about halfway up, and that's acceptable. You actually can have oil anywhere showing on the stick, and that meets Honda's requirement. So you could top a little bit more oil if you really wanted to, but there's no need for it. So this is actually perfect. So all we need to do now is put our dipstick very gently. These dipsticks have a tendency to do what they call cross thread. That just means that they'll mess up the plastic. So when you put this in, if it feels real tight, back it off and put it back in. So we're just going to tighten this up. There's an O-ring, so you just give it a good snug. And that's the end of the oil change. We just got to do our final test and we're completely done. Close the door. Flathead screwdriver. Give that a quarter turn. This is all closed. Last final things you need to do, we're going to run this generator outside for a minute or two, or maybe even 5 minutes, just to make sure everything's good. I still recommend checking the oil one more time. Anytime you change the oil, you just want to make certain everything is good, no leaks, and that it's running great. So you saved a bunch of money. You didn't have to take it to a dealer or somewhere else to do this, and it's something you should know how to do yourself. Really only costs about 15 bucks, and that's really if you're buying that oil at full price. Let's see how we did. Sounds good. You're going to need a 3/8 inch ratchet. This particular one has a very slim head. That's the one I like, but you certainly can use a normal ratchet. Next tool, 14mm spark plug socket. This is what the manufacturer recommends. I highly recommend getting the metric 14mm size. This is a 3-inch regular extension. This fits into your spark plug socket. Phillips head screwdriver. Flathead screwdriver. Going to need a spark plug gapping set. You can get these at any auto parts store. A lot of even Honda dealers sell them. You'll need that to gap your spark plug. And then last but not least, Honda spark plug. So a lot of you are going to say, why do I need the Honda? Watch the rest of this video and I'll explain it. It makes your life a little bit easier, and you're guaranteed to get the right plug if you buy it at your dealer. And all together, that's what you need. Pretty easy job. Watch the rest of the video and I'll show you how I do it. But if you read the book, you're actually supposed to replace this spark plug. I think the manual actually says whenever it needs it. But in my case, I like to do the plug still every year, and I might be a little bit old school, but I would recommend that you want to at least do it every 2 years. I've had a couple plugs over the years go bad, and on something like a generator, it's well worth the $3 to replace it before it ends up being a problem. So if your generator is brand new, you don't need to do it, but I think it's important to know how to, because you might need to do it at some point. Flathead screwdriver. I'm on the left-hand side of the generator. This is the left door, and that's if you're facing the control panel. It doesn't really matter though, you only have 2 doors. So keep opening them until you see a spark plug. So we're going to open this door, and for purposes of this video, you don't need to do this yourself. Honda's pretty clever. This door has a tendency to want to close a little bit, so if you actually lift this off, it'll actually come out, and with a little bit of finagling, it pops off. So we're going to put this aside where it doesn't get damaged or scratched. Let's start with a Phillips head screwdriver. Easy enough. And first, let's explain where the spark plug is. So this is the spark plug cover right in this area, and it's identified with a very easy to see Phillips head screw. So we're going to unscrew that. Just a few turns. And this is what they call a captive screw. So what happens is this screw never actually will fall out. It holds the screw, which is why they call it captive. So once it's very loose, don't worry that it's not going to pop out. You're just going to gently lift the cover off. And so now at this point, what we're going to do, we're going to get you some close-ups so you can really see how this works. So the spark plug boot, as they call it, is actually right here. So when you're at home, don't be so nervous, because this area is pretty well lit because I've got some creative lighting going on. But at home, you might not be able to see it quite so well. I actually recommend doing it outside if you can. So all you need to do, no tools. I just have my hand with, of course, my gloves on. And this little boot tab right here, it might not be the exact name for it, but all you need to do is pull that off. So the easiest way is to just use your hands and grip it with your thumb and your forefinger and just pull that out. And that's it. So right now, you can see that we've got the boot off, and underneath in here, from my fingers pointing, hopefully you can see the top of the spark plug that's right here. So what we're going to do, I like to tuck this out of the way a little bit right here. So what we need to do now, we need a spark plug tool that's going to go in there, and I'm going to show you how that works. A bit of a tight clearance. You've got your spark plug in here, and you've got a frame right here. So my recommendation is you're going to need a spark plug socket, and in this case, because this is a foreign machine or a Japanese machine, it's metric. But you can use other sizes, but the official size is a 14mm spark plug socket. This may not look exactly like yours does, but 14mm is the size you want. So the next thing you've got to get, because this by itself is going to be so far in you won't be able to do it, you need an extension. I recommend this particular extension or this size. So the reason is, this is a 3-inch extension. So if you use a longer extension than these two, so I'm going to put these together. So you're looking for about 6 inches of length on this. And the reason you need this is, the next step you've got to do is insert this tool onto the spark plug and make sure it's seated properly. But the real challenge, as you can see, it's a little bit tight in here. If you get an extension that comes way out, the problem is the angle, it's going to hit this frame and you're actually going to damage your spark plug. So my recommendation is you want the extension inside the frame. So the frame is actually here, the extension is in. Let's see if I can zoom a little more. Hard to get from that angle, but you'll see it when I put the ratchet on it. So in my case, I'm using a little bit of an old school ratchet. This is just a regular ratchet, even though it looks a little bit unusual. I like it for tight situations. So at this point now, again, I'm going to push the boot out of the way a little bit. I'm going to put this spark plug tool on. You don't want any pressure on this ratchet. I can still put my finger up in the frame and there's still room. So again, I've got the ratchet on top of the spark plug boot, and I can't stress this enough, because if you are putting pressure on that spark plug as you pull it out, you absolutely can damage it. So the key is, if your ratchet is a little bit wiggly afterwards, that's okay, as provided that you're using the 14mm socket. It has to be tight on there, but you just need clearance for the ratchet. So I'm sorry if I've over-explained that, but it's really important. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to loosen your spark plug. Okay, that's out. So here's my recommendation. I don't use my ratchet to loosen the spark plug. Once it's loose, I pull that right off, and then I'm going to actually twist this by hand. And the reason, again, I do that is because if I'm doing it by hand, I'm not going to damage this. I'm going to zoom back. So I'm going to slowly do this, and I'm going to unscrew it. And you keep going until it really is quite loose. And again, if you're using a spark plug socket, once you're done and you take the plug out, it should come out. And the plug should be on the end of your socket. So let me zoom back out a little bit. And it actually looks pretty good. That's your spark plug hole right there. So now that we've got our spark plug out, we're going to get a replacement and we're going to take a look at it. All right, so now we want to get our new spark plug ready and get it installed. So it's actually pretty easy. I'll show you the steps. So the first thing to talk about is the ends of these spark plugs. So when you look at the ends, you see these threads. So in the old days, you used to spend a lot of time and effort putting anti-seize compound on these, and I know that a lot of guys still do. By today's standards and per NGK, who is the manufacturer of the spark plug Honda recommends, you do not put anything on these threads. So you take the spark plug right out of the box, and it is ready to go except for one thing. All right, so now we've got to gap this plug. So let's take our feeler gauge and we're going to put it into the gap and we're going to run it in. So there should be a little bit of resistance here, and that's what you're looking for, just a small amount of resistance. It shouldn't be very loose. It shouldn't be so tight that you can't get it in. My recommendation is, if this is not the case, I don't recommend bending these on your own unless you're pretty experienced. So my recommendation, again, I said it earlier, buy this plug at a Honda dealer, ask for the Honda branded plug, and it won't actually have the Honda name on the plug. It'll still say NGK, but it'll come in a Honda box. So when you look at it, this is going to be the end of it. It's going to say BPR 6ES. So this is the correct plug per the manufacturer's instructions for the EU7000is. So again, if you've learned one thing from this part, make your life easy, pay $2 extra and go to the Honda dealer or order it online. Get the Honda part number of the plug and you'll get the plug ready to go. Typically it's gapped, but I'm still telling you it's worth double checking it with that feeler gauge to make certain. Or if you're having a problem, ask your dealer to check the gap, and they typically will for you, and you can still do the job yourself and save a lot of money. All right, so once your plug is gapped, and again, you don't need anything on the end of it, all we need to do is take our spark plug tool, reattach the plug in it, and now our goal is to get the spark plug in that hole. So very gently, you are going to put that tool right back in. And I like to wiggle it a little bit. And once you feel that that spark plug is there, you can very gently, I absolutely recommend you turn that tool by hand, and you're going to spin it until the spark plug finally tightens up. And again, I do not recommend using the ratchet until the spark plug finally reaches the bottom, like it did right there. So I can't turn it anymore by hand. And if you want to check it to be sure, you can even loosen it and just make sure it feels like it's threading in smoothly. So I'm going to retighten it back up to where it was. And now all we need is to use our ratchet. So take our ratchet, put it on there, and I have to reverse the direction. And this is, again, just an average ratchet. And when you tighten it, this is where things need to be tight, but not so firm that they're going to tear the ends of it off. So I just recommend putting it on fairly tight. Typically they recommend that after that spark plug touches the bottom, that the ratchet moves a quarter of a turn. And what a quarter of a turn means, it goes from here a quarter of the way across. Consider a full circle, so you're going a fourth of the way. And it can vary by manufacturer. So now that that's done, it's tightened up, we're going to remove our ratchet and our spark plug tool. So now that our spark plug is installed and it's tight, we need to put this boot back on. It's very easy. You just slide it onto the spark plug and you press it until it goes in all the way, and a lot of times you'll feel a little bit of a click from the connector. So I'm going to slide it on. I don't know if you could hear that, but when I push this boot all the way in, it made a little click. So now we've got the plug back in, it's tight. All we've got to do, zoom out a little, is to put this cover back on. So this just very easily snaps on. So now that that cover's on, we're just going to tighten it up. We'll screw this in until it's tight. So with this cover, it doesn't stay on 100%. Like, it's pretty tight, but if you pull on the edge, you'll see there's a little bit of play, and that's totally normal. So the good news is, at this point, we're done. So all we need, we're going to turn our key to on. You're going to see some control lights light up, and then once they go out, you're ready to go. Push the engine start. Make sure your eco throttle is on the off position. That means the generator is going to fire at full speed. Today we're going to change the air filter on a Honda EU7000is Generator. It's actually pretty easy, and I'm going to take you through the steps. Just take you a few minutes. Tool we need for the job: simple flathead screwdriver to start. So if you're looking at the front of your generator, this is the left door, and all you need to do is put your flathead screwdriver here, turn a quarter turn. So for the purposes of this, I'm going to open this door, but something that's pretty unique, and you may not be aware, this door, actually, if you leave it open like this when you're working on it, a lot of times it's going to want to close. But to make this even easier for the video, once this door opens, you can actually lift the door, and the door comes right off. You can pop it out here. Just have to finagle it out a bit. Comes right off. So the door actually just sits on these pins. So it's a pretty clever design. So you can put this somewhere that it won't get scratched or damaged while you're working on your generator. So your air cleaner is actually located right here. So to change your air cleaner, you only have to do a couple of things, and the best part of all is you don't need any tools. So these two clips are very, very easy. You simply lift these up one at a time until they come all the way up. So the next step you have to do is to simply pull this cover off, but sometimes the cover, just like this, will not come off. So behind these handles are two small clips. You simply just lift them up with your finger, just like I'm doing, like this. And at that point, your cover's free. So you just very gently, you sort of maneuver the cover out. And actually, in my case, the air cleaner fell right out. So I'm going to show you a little bit of detail in this that's important. So in the back of your cover, the first thing you're going to notice is you have this foam pad. This normally will stay in place. If your generator is very old and there's a lot of debris in here or it looks disintegrated, this should be replaced, and that is part of your kit. So for the moment, we're just going to set this down because I'm not going to replace this. The second piece, which is the air cleaner element itself, and this is really important. So there's a small grid on this, and the purpose of this is to really keep this from either being dented or collapsing. So the important thing that you want to remember is remember the order that these go in. So I'm going to take the grid, and I'm actually going to place it right here for now for safekeeping. This is my air cleaner element. Pretty straightforward, but again, you want to remember the direction it goes. So in this case, this element sits directly in this housing. And I'll give you some close-ups of this afterwards so you understand how to replace it and avoid some potential problems that you could have, though this is a pretty easy operation and should just take you a few minutes. So on the bottom of the air cleaner housing, you're going to see this little clip, and you're going to see another one right there. On the bottom of the air cleaner housing, which is right here, you're going to see that you have a clip there and a clip there. And it's important that when you put this together, that those clips, like this one right here, that needs to seat into that one and into the second one as well. Alright, so now we're going to reassemble our filter. So remember what I just taught you about the tabs and the clips, because it's important. Put that grid back on. So we're assembling it exactly how it was before. So I recommend that you put the filter actually in the housing like this first, because this really helps things seat, and I think it'll make it a little bit easier. So the only part of this can be a tiny bit tricky is, again, you want to get these tabs in place. So what I do is I hold the filter with my hands, and some of this may not be that easy to see because of the video. And once you have it in place, you're going to feel those tabs, basically you'll feel it drop in. So I wanted to give you that close-up because without it, it's kind of hard to tell on the camera. Okay, so now that the bottom is in and your tabs are in those clips, this part can also be a little bit odd, but again, if you have problems and it starts to stick, don't freak out. Just relax a little bit and undo it and try it again, and I'll show you what I mean. So one of the things you need to do is to fold these metal clips down, and you're going to push this forward, and these clips are actually going to begin to seat. And the next part you do is just lift this up, and you may have to push those clips down a little bit to get them to engage. And at that point, this will feel tense, and you close it. So this one on the left can be a little bit tricky because it doesn't always work quite so easily. But again, you're going to lift it up, and then as you start to pull back, like right now, there's no tension. So what you want to do is lift it up, and then with your other finger, just press the clip down a bit. And now I can feel that it's hooked and it's tense. So now I'm going to let go with my other hand, and I'm just going to push that down. So air clean is a very important item. So when it's done, you want to make absolutely sure that this is secure and it's not wobbly, because if it's wobbly, one of these clips might not be engaged. If it doesn't feel right, undo it and do it over again. And it's very easy. So I'm showing you every detail. When you do it, it's probably going to take a lot less time. So don't be nervous about this. It's typically just about a 5 to 10 minute job. It's actually very easy. So that's it. It's kind of a long video, but in reality, when you do it yourself, it just takes a few minutes to take care of this amazing machine. So please give me a thumbs up in this video, subscribe to my channel, and comment below. I'd love to hear from you.